Welcome to the Social Engineer Podcast. I'm Chris Nagy, CEO and founder of Social Engineer LLC and the Innocent Lives Foundation, and I've been hosting this podcast since way back in 2009. Before we get to our awesome guests, just a couple quick announcements. First of all, if you're looking for any kind of social engineering services such as adversarial simulations, risk assessments, vishing, or phishing services, you want to check out our website at www.social-engineer.com. Our brand new website will give you an easy rundown of all the things we do and how your company can be made more safe. Also, if you're a practitioner of social engineering and you're looking to advance your career, we have an amazing new offering. As a matter of fact, we've never done this one before. Our master's level social engineering has always been invite only from our previous students. This is the first year that we're ever going to open it to the public. You can find more information on the website at social-engineer.com. Go to training, go to master's level, and you can see that class is coming in October. And all the details about what will be happening there from October 23 to 27 here in Orlando, Florida. There's only 16 seats available, and I don't think all 16 are available right now. I think we have 5 or so filled. So you want to go check that out as soon as you can. If you love the topic of social engineering, then I invite you to jump into our Slack channel. If you want to talk about any topic at all, really, as long as you keep it family friendly and fun, then you can come on in. We have about 1,500 people in there now every day talking about different aspects of SE. We even have a job board. I think we've had about 10 or so people find employment there. So you can come on in if you're looking for work, or if you're hiring in the cyberspace, you can come on in and talk about what you're looking for. And I'm sure you'll find some people to connect with. I'd like to take a moment, too, to invite everyone to go visit innocentlivesfoundation.org. If you're not familiar with our mission there, it's a nonprofit I started over 6 years ago, and we work closely with law enforcement to help geolocate and track people who traffic children and create child abuse material. And I'm really proud to say that my team over there is now very close to 500 cases that we've worked with law enforcement in the last 6 years, being able to locate these predators and help law enforcement take them off the internet and, of course, into prison where they can't hurt kids anymore. If you want to support us, you can do that through voluntary donations, or you can volunteer to help out the mission. We have lots of different needs there. So you can go to our website at innocentlivesfoundation.org and check it out. And speaking of the ILF, one of our big supporters is Neil Fallon from the band Clutch, who also gives us the music for this podcast. So if you're enjoying the music, go over to pro-rock.com, check them out, give them a thumbs up and a like, thank them for all the things that they do for us here. And if you like the content that we're putting out, the podcast and other things, then I really ask you to go over to the YouTube channel, leave us a comment, give us a thumbs up and a like. You can do that on Spotify or iTunes also. If you have any suggestions for us, you can put them there. We always love those things, and it really helps us to keep putting out the content that we are. And if you have any questions that you'd like to see answered on the podcast, then you can put them into the chat there at any one of those channels, and we'd be more than happy to add that content here into the podcast. Okay, let's talk about our guest. I'm really excited about Andi Schmied she's an urban designer and a visual artist. And you think, what does that have to do with social engineering? Well, with her installations and printed work, she explores the architectural framing of social space and uncovers urban anomalies. These vary from areas that have deviated far from the original plan function, utopian architectures, or spaces of extreme privilege. Andi graduated as an urban designer from the Bartlett School of Architecture in London and is currently a PhD candidate at Moholy Nagy University of Arts and Design. Her latest book, Private Views, a High-Rise Panorama of Manhattan, won first prize in visual arts category of the Most Beautiful Czech Books competition. Her work, among other places, has been shown from London to Vienna and everywhere in between. And I'm encouraging everyone that's listening to this to go check out her TED Talk, because it is one of the most wonderful examples of social engineering that you're ever going to see. Andi, thanks for coming on the show. Really happy to have you here.
Very happy to be here. Hi.
Can you just tell us a little bit about you? Like, how did you get to this space? What made you want to look into architecture and do the things that you're doing?
I studied design on my BA, and somehow after that, I was just really wanting to go to bigger scales. So somehow that was the urban scale. And when I actually did study urban design, I kind of realized how problematic it is, how it's actually being done in government offices or municipalities, and how usually things are just being planned on a big table without much consideration for how the scale of it and how big it is and how much it's going to impact people. So instead of actually becoming an urban designer, I just started to criticize certain urban phenomena from a visual art perspective. And that's how I ended up, I guess, as an artist instead of a designer.
So do you find that a lot of architecture that may be beautiful, but it actually hurts the people living around that area?
Exactly. Like both architecture and both urban design plans, which are obviously much larger. So when you like redesign an entire district, you impact so many people's lives along the way. And even just like buildings can really impact what's around them, or how people interact with them, or how simply life is going to be around it. And I think it's very often not considered, and very often architects see it as kind of like an ego trip of like, let's build as big, as shiny, as beautiful as possible, which is not what's going to lead to a livable or comfortable city, in my view.
That's interesting. Yeah, when you go to a city, a lot of times one of the things you'll see that they brag about or talk about is like, oh, this building is the second largest in the world, or the second tallest in this hemisphere, or whatever.
Exactly.
So we have a bunch of things I want to talk to you about, but I'm fascinated by your TED Talk. Because, in our field, like in essence, what we get to do is companies will hire us to test their security.
Right.
So we have to break in through email or phone calls or physically by putting on a whole act.
Right.
Right. And then when we do it, we get to come back and say, hey, here's what we did, and here's why it worked, and here's what you can do to fix it.
Right.
You did that, but for a wholly different reason. What motivated you to want to create this fake billionaire persona life just to get into these apartments? Why did you do that?
I was on a 3-month artist residency program in New York, and basically, first, just like any tourist would go, I went up to the Empire State Building, and I loved the views, obviously, just like I think everyone who goes there loves the views. And I started to photograph the views to every direction. And as I was like standing there and photographing it and looking around, I kind of realized that there are quite a few buildings that are at least as tall as this like highest visitors deck in New York, or even taller. And at the beginning, it was just this like sheer curiosity of how the view would be from these different perspectives over the city. So then I left the Empire State Building, and as I was just really walking around the streets and kind of like started to put down addresses in my notebook of like places I really wanted to visit, as high up as possible. For example, any high spot next to the Central Park, which is not available in any form to the public. And slowly I realized with my address list that all of those buildings are relatively newly built, most of them in the last decade. Ultra tall luxury residential high rises, which is kind of like the least accessible places on earth, I would say, or like it's really not for visitors. And so I was like really thinking, okay, but then how can I go up to those places anyway? Many of them were still under construction. So even like befriending people living there wouldn't be an option. But anyway, like I have no idea who lives there. And so what seemed to be the only option was to pretend to be an ultra wealthy Hungarian billionaire, or in Hungarian terms, billionaire, in dollar terms, millionaire, I guess. And trying to either purchase or rent an apartment, depending on what was available on the higher floors. And so that's what I did. And first, at the beginning, I really just wanted to kind of photograph the views. But then as I was going, I really stumbled upon this like bigger phenomena, which is this like ultra luxury high rise. And I just kept going. It was really addictive as well.
Yeah. I found it fascinating. And some of the things, the videos that you took, that you showed in your TED Talk, it's almost like terrible to even say it, but the way that the people talked to you was so aggressive in their sales pitch. Yeah. But then also it was almost like you only got shown the kitchen and the kids' rooms, because, well, your husband's going to go to the other spots, but it was, and like, how did that make you feel, like having to deal with that over? And it seemed like every place you went, it was the same exact thing. There was no difference. It
wasn't the same exact thing, to be honest. I mean, like, obviously in the TED Talk, I just wanted to put the most exaggerated version of it. I would say that real estate agents range from very normal to just like show me that, hey, that's the kitchen, go around, to this like really extremely theatrical types who really kind of like learn about Hungarian culture before going with me and tell me about that the smell of my favorite food would go around the apartment, which is a goulash, and like really kind of like try to personalize the tour as much as possible to a Hungarian rich lady, whatever they think that means. But what was interesting, as you mentioned, is kind of all the stereotypes that they put on me as a Hungarian rich lady, and so the persona of this Gabriella, that was the name of my billionaire alter ego, kind of grew organically just by answering the questions of the agents. So on the first day, the first agent would ask me, do you have a chauffeur? And I just like suddenly answered, yes, of course. And from that point on, Gabriella had a chauffeur. Or they would ask me, how will you bring your nanny? And so it was obvious from that point on that we have a nanny. And so we were looking from that point on a slightly bigger apartment already because we need a room for the nanny. So kind of all these like circumstances of the rich wife were really kind of imposed on me by the assumptions of the agents. Which was nice because I think it really shows what they experience while showing around the actual.
Yeah, that's
client.
interesting.
Yeah.
So you wrote about this in your book, Private Views.
Yes.
This is what.
Yeah.
And so, what was the like? What did you want to get across with that book and this story? Like, what was the whole message behind there?
I think for me the most important thing was that this entire universe is like really, I mean, like purposefully hidden. So. I really just wanted to kind of show it and talk about it, how it works, what kind of things are there. I think what's one of the really problematic things about these places, among many other things, but one is that they are basically just bought for investment purposes. Yeah. So even though they are these like massive monsters in the city, they don't even live in them. There's some data that currently 70% of the already sold properties of this sort is standing empty all the time, which is like crazy in a city where I don't know what is the exact homelessness data, but just like it's really somehow doesn't make any sense to me. And besides that, they have many problematic things. They obviously drive up property prices in the areas where they are getting built. They send away like businesses that are in the area, because obviously if no one lives in the area, there's not many people buying things. So also that, plus because of their tallness, they cast enormous shadows over the city, which for example, in the Central Park, at certain times of the year, they cast over a 1.5 mile shadow, some of these buildings. It's a moving shadow, but still, apparently some animal life changed slightly in the south part of the Central Park because of these buildings. And obviously, like many people's, up until then, sunny living rooms got shaded by these buildings that no one lives in. So many of these things are problematic. So I also want to get across that, I think. But I think just simply I want to show what's inside. And
that's a really, honestly, I got to tell you, I've never even thought of that until you just said at this moment. I have a beehive. I tend bees, and bees, they're so important for the sun. Like the sun is vital to them. And I had this one tree that got too tall. And I noticed that I had too much shade on my beehive, and the bees were just not coming out early enough. So I had to cut that tree to hide it. Now I'm thinking about this building.
Right.
How much it would affect something like the bees in the area. Like,
it affects humans as well. I mean, like the squirrels, whatever, like everything that's around it. Like for people as well. Yeah, it's a really, really crazy thing how much shadow they cast these buildings.
And in your TED Talk, you said that some of these people will have 4 of these around the globe.
Yes.
Which means that they're unoccupied for almost the whole year.
Exactly.
I mean, who spends $85 million on something and then doesn't live in it? I can't imagine. Right?
It's just simply because it's for kind of to store your money in a safe place. There's no real any other purpose of it. Because like even if the stock exchange crashes or whatever, these 85 millions At worst, they lose a bit of their value. At best, they even gain, but they're never going to become flat zero. So it's
real
basically just
goes up.
Yes, exactly. Especially when it's right in the middle of Manhattan. So
there's a lot there that you said that I never really thought about with the buildings. But also to think about how those are only 10 years old, some of those. So that is relatively brand new.
Some of them are some of them are 2 years old. Some of them are actually most of them were built after 2015 of these tallest ones. Wow. And the two absolutely tallest ones were completed 2 years ago during COVID. So they are really, really new.
Wow. So, because New York's always been expensive to live in.
Of course.
But now you think about driving those prices up even more.
Yes.
Because of these luxury apartments. And some of the videos you took, I'm like, holy mackerel, that was a huge house 100 stories up.
Right. It
was unbelievable to see that. And the views, I don't know, that makes me nervous a little bit, being that high up. It's just like glass from, this makes me a little nervous. But still, I never thought about the effect on the economy, the people, the area. That's really fascinating.
The height you kind of get used to. Actually, at the beginning, I remember that when I first went in an apartment, I was really shocked, oh, wow, this is gorgeous. And I could just sit here and watch it all day. And I was really surprised by the indifference on the face of the agent.
Huh.
And I thought,
they just got used to it?
Did he get used to it? And then I got used to it myself as well after a while.
Wow.
So it was really I don't know, in the 10th apartment, I was already okay, yeah, that's the view. I know it well because obviously they have the same view, most of these places. But at the beginning, I was really wow, this is the most amazing thing I've ever seen. Just like when I was in the Empire State Building and tourists are going up and they're it really becomes just your view, I guess, after a point.
So how did you deal with the gender bias? How did you not just get so angry and just start yelling at people? How did you control that? And how did that make you feel?
I think, I didn't get angry for the reason that I wasn't myself in a way. So I didn't feel that I'm being treated like this. I felt that it's actually telling me a lot about this phenomenon. So however bizarre it sounds, the more strange they treated me, the more I enjoyed it, because the more I felt actually I'm getting to something, or I'm seeing something I would have never seen, or I actually would have never thought about. But it was quite extreme. Very often when I was alone at the viewing, the agents would just tell me to please tell your husband that it's a great investment. They would never tell me it's a great investment, but it's something I should tell to my husband. And there were a few times when this fictional husband, a good friend of mine, came with me actually to the viewings, and then we were treated so differently. Agents would took him aside, and they would start to whisper to him, and he obviously told me after that it was all about the money and the investment, and you should be sure it's going to be all good. And to me, they really just directed their words in the kitchen, in the children's room, in the walk-in closet, and these kind of spaces. Wow. So it was a bit insulting, but then I kind of realized that it's not really the agent's fault. It's something that they got used to. They realized that, statistically speaking, 90% of the billionaires are men. So I guess that's what they deal with, or that's how it actually comes across at the end, that they have to speak with the man.
But they never assumed that it could have been your money.
They never assumed it could be my money. No.
And they never even asked, if you were the rich one or not, right?
No, I think that's not a question they would ask in that way. But it didn't even cross their mind that we make decisions together, or that I'm also financially minded or whatever. It was kind of taken for granted that it's his decision.
Yeah, so when you started this project, did you anticipate, did you say, I'm going to uncover some of this, or did that become one of the themes that came of this project?
It totally came along the way. I obviously enjoyed the play of it and the fun of it, of going into these places. But at the beginning, really, I was kind of as a mission, almost like I want to take a picture of the view from the living room of each of these apartments. And it was kind of this like autistic thing of like, yeah, now living room, this angle. And then I would just ask the agent, so sorry, can I take a picture? And they would, of course, always like super encourage me. Like, yes, of course, take pictures. That's something they like because it shows interest, I guess. But then as we were going, and at the beginning, I really was just like, oh, I want to take the picture and then leave. And then as I realized that, oh, actually, it's more interesting what's going on in the apartments and in these conversations and what it reveals than the pictures themselves, which are just like getting more and more boring views for me. And ultimately, they are all the same. So yeah, the phenomenon came with like during the process. And yeah.
How many did you do before you realized that the mission was changing?
Actually, I think I realized it just like after I did all the apartments. Like slowly, I just kind of like turned on my phone to like take videos also during the viewings, which also agents encourage. So it was also like very convenient. And then as I got home, I was like, actually, he said like super crazy things to me. And I listened it back and I was like, yeah, that's actually quite crazy. And then I kept on recording because I wanted to have these. And in the book, they kind of like are transcribed conversations. Yeah. So.
Wow.
Yeah. I think it was a process somehow.
Yeah.
But I kept on taking all these pictures because I had in mind to make a book of it.
Yeah.
From the beginning.
So what do you hope could be changed with putting this out there?
I mean, I don't think that putting this out there in itself will change anything, but I'm hoping that in the long run, there will be some regulation changes because that's basically the only thing that allows all these buildings to come up. The current city regulations, I mean, everywhere in the world, there are certain types of regulations that allow for certain types of buildings. In New York, it's this super tall typology because obviously the land is limited. It's an island. So things are on a small plot, but can go super high up. It's actually very regulated how high up they can go in New York, but for these buildings, there were all sorts of legal loopholes that made it to be what they are. So I would hope some change in that, even though obviously these buildings are already there. They're not going to go anywhere anytime soon. So, but yeah, I think that's the only way to go with this because yeah, it's government regulations that can change the erection
from an architectural standpoint. Is there a height that it's like past this, it's just unsafe? It's just not good.
I think in Dubai now they are starting to build a 2,000 meters building or something like that. The tallest one is also in Dubai. That's 853, the Burj Khalifa. And it's really tall. It's a nonsense. It's one of those things, what you just said before, that it's like everything has to be record breaking. And actually the tallest residential tower is in New York currently. And it's, I mean, engineering wise, I don't think there's much limits at the moment. It just like financially, it doesn't make any sense after a while because the higher you go, the more challenges you face during the building process. And so it becomes so expensive that the money just never comes back. So I think that's basically the limit. But engineering wise, I think you can really go very high.
I mean, 2,000 meters, that's more than a mile.
Yes. I
can't imagine what the sway in the building would be.
Yes, totally.
A mile up, that doesn't even make sense to me. Right?
No, it doesn't make much sense.
I'm not a fan of heights. That makes me nervous thinking about it, right?
Yeah.
Being up there and looking out a window. I don't even know if I would be able to handle that. That just... Wow. So what's next for you? What's your next project? What do you plan on doing now?
I'm actually working on a project in Dubai now, so that's why I'm so familiar with the black numbers. And that's about in 2007 and 8, which was like a really wrong timing. They built these islands in the shape of the word. I don't know if you know about them.
I've seen those pictures.
Yeah. So most of them are unoccupied still because they were just like marketed in the wrong time. And because it was like a strangely not so through project, in my opinion. It's basically, I think, 90 something islands, kind of in close proximity to each other. And the idea was that they sell each of them to one person. And
so they have their own island.
Exactly.
The island.
Yeah, they are quite small, but still, it's like kind of like you have a massive villa comfortably on it and your little garden. And the islands ever since kind of started to be taken over by nature and taken back by the sea a bit. There's maybe like 6 or 7 islands that have something on it, one a hotel and things like this, but the rest are just completely empty. Some islands, in fact, like grew together, so they are kind of like one thing now with like the shape of an 8, let's say, because engineering just wasn't. I mean, it's the first time they did anything like this, so they did not anticipate how the environment and the sea will change. I mean,
nature always takes over.
Exactly.
Right? If you let it go long enough, nature will fix. Like, look
Completely.
What happened during COVID.
Yeah.
And all of the waters in Italy got clean, right? From
yes,
the
exactly.
And Venice, right? Nature will fix it. If we stop messing with it, nature will fix it.
Yes, exactly. So that's happening there. So that's the place what I'm very interested in now. And that's already part of my current PhD studies. So
that's phenomenal. And so are you, this next project, are you doing this more as art or more of like trying to understand the effects on Earth again?
I think it's a bit of both. So it's always, I mean, I'm no expert in any field, let's say, or like I don't know about economy or I don't know about anything like very deeply in that respect. So I think it's always coming from an artistic point of view. Plus I always have this like big obsession and fascination with these places and things. So I just kind of have this big urge to show it to people of like, wow, look how crazy this is. The simplest, to explain it in the simplest way.
Those creative minds, though, you say you're not an expert in anything, but creative minds sometimes can open the doors for people to see things a completely different way. That's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I'm happy you see it that way.
If people want to follow you, they want to know more about your work, what's the best way for them to do that?
Maybe Instagram. It's just Andi Schmied, my name.
Okay. And we'll have it in the link in the show notes for your website and your Instagram.
Yeah.
I got a couple questions we'd like to ask people when they come on. So most of us who have done anything with our careers, usually we have some mentors. We have people that have helped us get there.
Yeah.
Who would you say is maybe one or two of your greatest mentors?
Okay. So I think one of my greatest mentor, his name is Nicholas Boyarsky. He is an architect and he was my teacher or tutor at my master's degree. And he was like extremely pushing me. I was on an urban design course and he was just like so much pushing me away from there toward art, in a very, supportive way. Mm-hmm. That really, I think without him, I would be in a completely different place, maybe drawing plans in a municipality office or I don't know. So I think he would be.
He must be very proud of what you've done then.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think he's one of these like biggest figures to whom
That's great.
I owe love.
Besides your book, what other books do you like? I mean, it has to even be about our topic. It can be anything that you've read. Do you have any books that you like to recommend?
Books that I like to recommend. Usually I like the most the book I'm currently reading, which sounds a bit stupid, but yeah.
No, it doesn't.
So right now I'm actually reading a book about classes in the United States by Paul Fassel. And it's actually from 83, so it's somewhat outdated, but it's very interesting the way how he describes class structure in the United States. So I actually recommend it a lot. I'm having a lot of fun with this book.
And what's the name of it? If I can get it, I'll put it in the show notes.
Classes, like classes, classes. And it has some second, just like longer.
Sure. No, that's okay.
title.
We'll find that.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
And thank you for coming on the show. Like, this is really fascinating. I mean, I'm going to put a link to your TED Talk in the show notes and to your website and your Instagram. I think what you've uncovered with this project is just so fascinating to me, you know, in a weird way, because, you know, we'd like to look at how humans make decisions and understand them.
Yeah.
And here's something I would have never thought that you would have uncovered so much bias in it, right? Because, like, you know, my wife and I, we make all our decisions together.
Right.
Like, you know, I wouldn't go out and buy an apartment without talking to her.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't do that either, right? So you uncover this whole world of some weird bias, and it's fascinating. And in the meantime, finding some beautiful shots and beautiful art. You combine these two crazy things and made it successful. So congratulations on that.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you for coming on the show. It was a really great conversation.
Thank you.
Yeah. And thank you, everyone, for joining us. Don't forget to give us a like or a comment in the show notes. We'll have all the links to everything that we talked about today. And you can join me next month where I'll have Mark Raffin on. He is a negotiations ninja. We'll talk to him. Until then, stay safe. See you.